presenter will be Saili Palande Datar, and she will be presenting on Dhangars, nomadic pastoralists of grass landscape. She has carried many researches on heritage and environment. Presently, she is involved as a project research scientist at IDC, IIT Bombay, for history and development of Ajanta caves. She is also actively involved in assorted writing on nature, culture, religion, archaeology, and history in various magazines, newspapers, periodicals in both Hindi and English language and Marathi language. She was recently been awarded for Masa Fellowship 2018-19 for documenting local histories in temple and cave complex of Pateshwar Satara in Maharashtra, India. Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Uh, Amongst all the landscape architects and ecologists, I might be a alien person maybe, but here I would like to present about Dhangars, nomadic pastoralist of grasslandscape. Now, for a settled communities like us, it is very difficult to perceive or understand the relevance or the charm pastoralist and nomadic lifestyle may hold. But I would like to take you to the most arid and dry landscapes of Maharashtra, which are to the west of the western Maharashtra. And we will talk about this particular community, which is Dhangars. Now, there are many nomadic pastoralists all across India, but I'll be concentrating mainly on this particular community, which is called Hatkar Dhangars. We have many researchers, both from environmental and archaeological fields, and ethnographers studying these community for various reasons. May it be the religion, may it be the old historical settlements that they had, and religious deities, pilgrim, their migration routes, etc. But very few people have actually worked on the livelihood aspects. We have ecologists working on them, but very few times we see that they come together and work on this. This particular opportunity was granted to me and many of other researchers under the title Ovitla Landga, which was a forest department initiative. Under that, we took up different theme topics, and we studied these landscapes and relation of wildlife, flora, fauna, grasslands as landscape, and Dhangar community as such. So as I said, Dhangars are classified as nomadic tribes or NT, and are considered as marginalized community. Can we switch off this? No. Okay. Okay, and they live in a clan-based societies with 23 clans and occupy these dry landscapes which we talked about. Geographically, their area, as I said, is in the around central and western Maharashtra, and they are generally known for the seasonal migration that they conduct every season. So, looking at the grasslands, unlike popular misunderstanding, they are extremely productive, resilient to unpredictable nature and of the changing climatic conditions. You know that even today, though we are receiving heavy rains in western Maharashtra, Marathwada is has a major rainfall deficit. And we know that even the density of population is low in certain areas, but these ecosystems are young, and they also provide good fodder as resource. And though they are less on water resources, they have good carbon sequestration abilities, and they are one of the best optimum use of resource for livestock rearing and such occupations as against farming and cultivation. So, but unfortunately, we see that historically, right from British's time, these grasslands have been classified as wastelands to a great degree, and efforts are being made even in wildlife sanctuaries and national parks like with of GIB, etc., for plantation. So there has been massive drives undertaken by both during colonial period and even during recent independent, after post-independence period, by revenue department, social forestry department, forest departments to plant on these grasslands. without actually understanding the resource potential of these lands. And we have this, if you look at the rainfall, this particular yellow belt is the belt which I am talking about, which have these primary grasslands, which are also sometimes classified as Indian savannas. If you briefly look at the historical and archaeological perspectives, initially there was no data as to since when did the Dhangars occupy this land. But during my research and some of the previous research, we got to know that the Dhangars have been occupying this landscape for more than 3,000 years now. So from megalithic period, that's 1000 BC onwards. And they are also responsible for getting iron and the local variety of horse to Deccan area. Though their material culture is very sparse, but they have been efficiently carrying out this humans across centuries. Only remaining material culture that you see is in the form of traditional cull sites on the migration routes and the tools that we found on the ground. So I'll just give you some glimpse of the these are the traditional, the archaeological burials. These are some of the cult sites and the ancestral worship that they carry. So you can see they are not like very ornamental temple-like structures, but definitely they mark the relationship with the landscape. And that relationship with the landscape can be classified in these many categories. And we also know that these community are very rich in traditional knowledge and traditional wisdom, right from curing the sheep diseases, curing their own diseases, tracking, studying of the landscape, taking stock of the fodder requirements and how much, till what duration it will last, what are the times to start your migration, when to come back, gauging the rainfall patterns. So they have their own agriculture calendar, and we should call grassland calendar, to look after this landscape. And unfortunately, these techniques are not documented as of now, and we need to work on these. These are a few of the living cultural sites that you see. So this particular sheep called Dakhni sheep is the indigenous sheep variety that has been conserved due to efforts of Dhangars through their traditional livelihood. And this is a very particular sheep, and which kind of dictates the rainfall. So it is not used to heavy rainfall. So once in these areas, even the monsoon rainfall is quite scanty, so they can live there. But after Diwali or after Dasra, they migrate to Konkan areas and tracts where the rainfall recedes after monsoon. Only then they can survive in the Konkan tracts. So Dhangar, essentially the whole community follows the sheep and its routine, and it actually guides the whole lifestyle. So the whole lifestyle and livelihood of Dhangars is weaved around this Dakhni sheep. And along with this sheep, we have few goat varieties that are used. Initially they used to use traditional goat varieties, but now there are new exotic varieties and improved breeds that are introduced. We see a particular kind of short stature horses that are used, not much for riding but for carrying the luggage, etc. And they are exclusively tended by women folks, whereas sheep is something that is tended exclusively by the men folks. Then we have sheep in the whole entourage. We have sheep dogs, domestic fowls are seen, and as I said, there's a very good knowledge of traditional medicinal plants that are herbs and grasses, etc., found in that area. They are also very well versed with the faunal elements of the landscape. These are, I'm just listing here a few products that we get from this community. Sheep wool was once something that got them a lot of revenue in the past, but today the meat, especially after the beef ban, has been the single most money earning element that they have. With 350 rupees to 400 rupees per kg, there is a premium item that's bringing them a lot of good finance. Sheep manure for agriculture was also one of the useful link that they had with the cultivators. In the form of sheep manure. We'll be talking about it later, but which is also receding as the agriculture practices are changing. Sheep milk, and these are the other secondary products that you get from these services and products that we get from Dhangars. I'll just show you these are, you can see that women stand these particular horses. Very occasionally you see some buffaloes or cows in the herd, but generally it's the goat and sheep. Now, as the yeah, more nomadic a dhangar, more sheep that person would have, and less nomadic a dhangar, more goat that community or that family would have, is the kind of logic that you see. So you see that from foraging to grazing. So there is this change that you see at various stages or various adaptations by dhangars. One of our key element in our project was also to look at the relationship of wolf, which is the apex predator of this landscape. Contrary to belief, wolves and their ranges are vast and expanded over a big landscape, and they are they cannot be limited by a sanctuary boundaries or national park boundaries. And we also saw that there was a lot of predation that was happening with the wolves and sheep. But we surprisingly saw that dhangars are pretty tolerant to the attacks by wolf, and they think that is an occupational hazard or risk. So much so that they even don't expect any compensation that is given. As against settled communities, where we saw around sanctuary areas, when there were wolf attacks, the locals were really angry, and they wanted compensation, demanded compensation, and there were some incidents of killing of wolves by burning the dens or the pups and so on. So this conflict was handled to some degree, and we the nomadic pastoral dhangar actually considers wolf as its brother. And they think that if the wolf passes through your sheep herd, the herd gets cleaned off all the deceased sheep, and it also keeps them on toes. And we not just see the migration of the dhangars along with the sheep to the Konkan area, we also see the wolves migrating. So any conservation policies around wolves should actually take into consideration the dependence of wolf on the sheep as the prey base. In our policies, we suggested the integrated landscape development, landscape conservation for conserving the niche of both dhangar as well as wolf predator. These are some of the images from the site. Along with the wolves, you see jackal, which are quite a few in number, black buck, we have gazelles, and there are a few instances of hyenas, etc. One particular issue that we handled was about Mayureshwar Supe, and as I said, that putting a small area under a conservation protection by forest department actually doesn't help the conserving of wildlife, flora, fauna, but we should have an integrated approach. And this particular area around Supe Baramati has the biggest population of dhangars, which is also paralleled by huge population of sheep, which is dependent on the grasslands around. And cordoning of a certain area has actually caused huge conflicts leading to gunfires, etc. So we tried having some meetings to make sure that the resource is shared, and still the efforts are on. The issue is yet not solved. But of course, we have pointed out some rigid government policies that can be laxed or changed or adapted and so on. This particular phenomena is the biggest thing in the life of dhangar. Everything is actually the whole system is set around the great seasonal migration that happens, where they migrate to Konkan and back. And on the way, they have this symbiotic relationship with the farmers, agricultural land, with the help of sheep manure, which used to enrich the farms on the way. But with the increase in cash crops, now we see that the pattern is falling, and this symbiotic relation is broken. Along with that, the developmental pressures, both from agriculture and industry, have been major disincentives for allowing this migration to happen in efficient manner. And I actually have traveled with dhangars with 60 sheep for a month, and I have seen the kind of problems that they face during this migration, which lasts for 1 month from Deccan to Konkan and from Konkan to Deccan. So, and there we see that the losses are the biggest in terms of economics, etc. I'll just show you some of the glimpse right from traffic to water sources to taking the the lack of common spaces, that are the shrinking spaces. That these are the problems that you see along. As you see on the way, you see this plotted and fenced land, and it is very difficult to establish the right of a Dhangar who has been occupying this land for 3,000 years and yet cannot have a right of to grazing on a particular patch of land once, like 2 to 3 days per year. So we really need very different sort of legal policies to accommodate this very niche requirement of this particular community. Instead of reservations of the community, the reservations of grazing rights is something that we have proposed in our report. And as I said, with the developmental pressures, there has been a lot of disincentive which actually translates in the changing of the lifestyle. So sometimes they turn into the complete nomadism, which actually results into the random exploitation of grasslands, and it also leads to a poor economic and social conditions. We see that the agro-pastoralism with sheep has been replaced by goat, and when they settle down, the subsistence is very difficult. It puts a lot of pressure on the local resources throughout the year. If a person only staying for 4 months with the sheep or goat stays for a year, it definitely creates a lot of conflict situation even with the other caste-related, village-related conflicts on the common lands. We also see that people who have sold the sheep stock and bought land are not able to sustain the agriculture for want of irrigation. We have some extreme cases of deaths and farmer suicide, etc. There are landless labor. Sometimes they convert into landless labor, again marginalizing themselves and abandoning the livestock and livelihood to replace tractor operating contract laborers. So, and the worst thing that happens to them is exodus to cities. They just give up their lifestyle and they shift to cities, big cities, and doing whatever they can. And all the skills, traditional knowledge, and the nurturing or potential that has been built over the year kind of goes down the drain. I'll just show you some of the photographs. You see, they are one of the great, eco-friendly lifestyle people. They hardly need anything, and they're so flexible in their demand, and they're very cordial. They're not at all aggressive at all. And as I said, this is how they live. Sometimes they build this, the Ramoshi community, they have this relationship with the Ramoshi community where they build this Dhangar Vadas or Mendi Vadas, whereas they actually stay in very small pal-like huts, which are seasonal huts. And when they settle down, then they build homes. They have, every Dhangar clan has its ancestral home where they actually have a pakka built house, but which is not occupied, or it is only occupied for the education of the children or the old ones, residents of old ones, etc. So based on this research, I'll just read out 2-3 main recommendations that we had done. The work is not yet complete from my side. I mean, I'm pursuing this work furthermore. But we proposed to Forest Department that the whole wasteland nomenclature should be turned into golden lands or for the grasslands. Then we also said that there should be a major land use policy overhaul where we allow these grazing rights for a selected, may it be through parvanas or ek-sadi land, etc. It is also seen that stall feeding is not possible in case of the sheep. So foraging over large landscape is the only option. So securing those grazing rights is very, very important. Plantation measures need to be really rethink, and I think with this kind of audience, they can definitely be much more sensitive towards grasslands and what are the stakeholders that are using this landscape. Documentation of traditional knowledge and wisdom is extremely important. It's really, life-changing in that sense. And as I said, conservation of wolves, grassland flora, fauna should be done with the stakeholders, taking stakeholders of this nomadic pastoral Dhangars as one of the main. And we also need a lot of economic and ecological interventions to strengthen the restoration effort as well as the market links that Dhangars have. So thank you. If you have any questions, it's a very general thing I have presented. There are a lot of nuances. We can go in detail further.